Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the hottest marriage show in town. I am too much. My better half is due, and we are doing too much. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing well.
You're always doing well. Tell me, what does well look like for you? Or is it just like the correct terminology you say when somebody say, how are you doing?
No. I guess when I think I'm doing well, I'm just saying I don't have any there's nothing that's actively stressing me right now. Feeling like the morning was uneventful. Well, it wasn't uneventful, but I don't have any complaints.
Okay, I can dig it. So what I wanted to kind of just touch upon, I don't know what episode you guys will listen to before you listen to this one, but the episode prior to this one, we could not finish because I was so sensitive and emotional that I got all in my feelings. And maybe one day when we're like really famous, people will try to like crack our database to steal that episode. But I just want to say I apologize to my wife for being so insecure in so many different ways that I didn't know. The point of me wanting this podcast was to show the improvement that I'm trying to have. And yesterday let me know that I'm not anywhere close to where I want to be. So I wanted to apologize for putting my wife through that because she definitely just laughed at my ass.
Oh my God.
While I was hot.
He was really mad. But you know what? One of the things I wanted you to know, and I kept trying to tell you, but you weren't ready for me to say it, was that I wasn't laughing at him. So we had gotten into a conversation where I have a hard time with him sometimes because he doesn't interact with me the way he used to. And so when I make general statements about what it's like being a wife or what I've experienced, he wants me to look at everything according to how he is now. And it's hard because I feel, he may not, but I feel sometimes like he's thinking of himself in terms of the past, but with somewhat of this mind frame he has now. And the way it was displayed then is not the same as now. Like it's almost like night and day in regards to how he is responsive to me and how, paying attention to how I feel and what I think. Like it wasn't like that when we were younger. And so when I was making this comment, it was really just talking about how it was being a wife coming up and not really knowing what a lot of stuff. Anyway, so he ends up getting mad.
Big mad.
And I mean, big mad to the point of like, he can't even speak to me. And to me, I couldn't stop laughing. And I wasn't laughing at you. I was trying to say this. I was laughing at the fact that we had gotten so late in the day. Usually we record in the morning before I start work. And we had started later in the day. We weren't even going to record. And I was like, you want to record? And he's like, yeah. So he pulls everything out so we'll record. We get started. And usually he leads us into a conversation. But I happened to make a comment. And it took us off the rails. And I was laughing uncontrollably because I was like, none of this even had to happen. I didn't have to suggest we record. I didn't have to say anything about that comment. And even in the conversation, we had gotten to a point where it had died down. And I said, wow, like we were getting really mad in here. And he was like, yeah, I was. And I was like, yeah, I was too. And then I expounded on why I was getting mad. And guess what, y'all? Round two, ding, ding. And I was just thinking to myself, none of this had to happen. Like, this is not what. And I was just laughing. And his response, he was so upset with me because, well, for many reasons, I'm sure he would say. But when he was upset, to have your partner laughing, and I'm laughing with tears in my eyes, not like of sadness, but just disbelief. Like, this was some utter bullshit and it didn't even have to be. And I could have had a really good, uneventful day. And I chose to make those few choices I made put he and I in such a shitty space.
It was temporary. And
it was, but the point is that was why I was laughing, and all it was doing was hurting you more. And nobody wants to hurt their partner like that.
And but that's what I told you. It was necessary because it humbled me again. It allowed me to know that I still have, a ways to go. So I know that you were looking for a way to avoid it, but that just meant somebody else was going to do it. And at least I got to do it with you, and I can be like, okay. So, I think, it was a lesson that I learned, and I didn't know how serious it was until Darius said that Day treats people outside better than him. And then I started thinking like the interaction that we had yesterday during that moment. I'm telling you, I can tell you when I walked back, I had my coat on because I was ready to go outside.
He was about to grab his ball and leave, y'all.
I was. And I can just tell you like the different ways that I was feeling. But when I went to the back and like you were talking, right, and I could tell that you were not taking anything I was saying serious, and you wanted to talk, and then I hear you laughing and look, and I was like, that's why I didn't want you to fucking talk. Because you're talking, and regardless of words coming from, whatever you're saying to me sounds like fighting words.
Look, I was really trying. Y'all ever tried to be the bigger person? And you try to be the bigger person, and the person won't let you. That shit be making you mad. Like,
how can a person be a bigger person? You see them laughing.
I know, but see, through my laughter, I was coming to try to explain to you so that you didn't feel.
Oh, I was supposed to recognize that this experience was different from everything I've ever seen.
I know. But I came up in that mug and I was like,
and you know what's so crazy?
He won't let me be the bigger person.
I need y'all to check this out. So now. I was putting on my coat, and she was in the kitchen, and she looked back and she was like, oh, you really mad? You put your coat on. So at this point, I'm really hot, right? So, and I'm like, don't talk, just don't talk, okay? And I go to the back, and then I come back and I see her laughing, and I'm like, she's still laughing. She didn't know I was serious? And I'm like, look, check this out. I hit the wall in the back, like the door, and with my hand, because I was like, I cannot believe. No, it wasn't even about you then. It was like, I cannot believe I am out of control. I hit the wall, and I was like, oh my God. And I said, I can't stop. So when I left outside, I went to go sit, the stones, and I just sat down, right? And I was like, I cannot believe that I want to be this person, and the person that I know that loves me the most, and I can't even control my emotions. And then I just started to unlayer, like, what was it that caused me? And I was just like, I'm insecure because I'm thinking, if I'm your husband and I feel like I am capable of doing these things, and even during that time, there's a certain level of confidence that even the things that, even if you say that I wasn't doing, I know that I was doing. And if you say something that's like, so she just let me not do that all that time. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what am I good for? So I'm thinking like,
he's an extremist sometimes. Cause it's like, what am I good for? Come on. It was just.
Well, I was telling you in my mind, I know the difference. I know that I was thinking about, and this is what also I thought about when I was out there.
Yeah, it was 20 degrees outside.
It was, but you know what? I wasn't cold, and I wasn't cold, and I was crying.
He was so hot,
and I was seeing.
Check this
out. I was seeing if my tears were gonna turn into like.
Oh my God, little icicles.
Because it was 20 degrees, so I was like maybe, but that's all the stuff I was thinking out at once. But I was really bothered, and I was like, I cannot believe. But then I was like, what can I take away from this? And I was like, okay, I humbled myself. I'm like, okay, you're not there. You know that you're going to have to go in here and apologize at some point because She really wasn't laughing at you. And I mean, I figured that out. But it was so many things that I was just like, I have things to work on. And I know that you were saying like we shouldn't have gone through that, but that just meant somebody else was able to do that. But now nobody else can do that because I figured out why I was like that.
Okay.
So it was a blessing for me, even though it was a bad moment. Because I'm telling you, I don't think I've ever hit anything before, but for me to turn around that fast, I was like, okay, I'm getting it.
I didn't even know you hit anything. That's interesting.
Oh, I know, because you would have got mad. You would have been like, oh, you mad?
Oh, we doing that?
Oh my gosh!
But I'm always the one talking about I'm ready to fight.
Because I was like, look, in my head, I was like, I don't want you to say anything else because everything you're saying, it seemed like you were just doing it on purpose. It's like, let's see what I could say to just send them over the edge. So again, I wanted to use this part. I know this kind of was a sidebar, but I apologize because,
okay.
That's one of those moments where you have a bad game. I told you like that's what I look forward to, those moments, and I was like, damn, I'm still not good, but I'll get there. Other than that, anything in particular that comes to your mind when you think of modern day racism?
Ah, shoot. No. Wait, I guess expound, because I want to know what you want from me.
Well, it's just what comes to your head, because when I think about it now, like I think that, like I told you before, color is a distraction, and people have used it against us, and we use it against our own selves. And I was just thinking about how you can be in a community that's being discriminated against, and you can discriminate within that community.
Yeah, but I think, one of the self-hate, because the messaging is so strong, it's really depressing. Like, even in talking, if I can say, like talking to my nephew, he makes me sad sometimes because he has I'm telling you, he has one of the purest hearts in the whole entire world. It's a lot of gunk around it, like messaging that he's kind of taking in. But when you talk to him, he's the sweetest thing. And sometimes he says things that just show how he's internally taking in the message that if it's bad, it's us.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's good, it's the others. And it really hurts. Growing up and learning what I have through documentaries and books and just discussing things with generations before us, things we've processed, I understand what the world is. I understand the messaging they gave me. I try my best to work my way through all of those thoughts. I don't ever want to look at my people through the lens, through the cracked lens that we were handed. But when I listen to him, and it's genuinely, he believes the things that he says about us. It keeps me aware that racism is alive and real and well in 2021. And regardless of how, it's so deeply ingrained that I don't know, I can't even imagine how, I don't know, I just feel like it's same monkey, different cage. You know what I'm saying? Before, it was definitely brutal. It was out in the open, but now it's out in the open. You know what I'm saying? It's brutal in its own way. It's brutal in a different way. I don't necessarily know if modern day racism, I mean, at the very nuts and bolts of it, is just that same old raggedy heifer that was here before, and her ass is still here, just doing her same thing. Like, we just dressed her in a different dress. Like, and it doesn't, and as much as I want to sit here and teach the kids like how to dodge the messaging, or even just Like when they express something, questioning them to the point where they have to sit there and say, yeah, why did I say that? Why do I think that? I just feel like it's such a daunting thing. How will I ever, if we're just responsible for these three little minds, how are we going to protect these three little minds?
Yeah. I don't know. When I look at them, I don't really look at them like that. I look at, how people look at them. There's a lot of things like, just growing up, when you hear certain words, Day was telling me about covet. Do you know what covet mean? She told me what it meant, and then when she told me what it meant, then I understood where I heard it from.
Okay, go ahead.
But she was like, it's when you want something that somebody else has and you're willing to take it.
I didn't know that part. I know about wanting it, but I didn't know that it was and taking it. Because, in the Bible it says you should not covet a man's wife.
Yeah.
I was just saying like lusting after her or wanting her, but not necessarily stealing her.
Well, that's what she said. She was, that's the reason why it made me think of that. When you can have these thoughts, sometimes you can't control, but when you act upon them, that's when it changes. So the actual act of taking is covet. And I was like, she was like, it's a synonym to envy.
But envy, to envy someone and to covet what they have, I can covet. I don't covet you.
Well, I'm just saying this is the lesson she learned.
Oh, okay.
She was teaching me from, because I was just trying to hear it in her words, and I was like, wow,
right.
I didn't think about it like that. But I was just thinking about certain things that our kids are being exposed to. We just don't know how they're taking it.
Okay.
And with Darius, it's scary because as much as I think I know where he came from, he shows me that I really don't know. Like, I've been far removed.
Yeah.
And I know some people are like, where did he come from? It was just a regular environment in his regards. Like, even like the way that I grew up, for a long time, I didn't know that I grew up in an environment that wasn't, I guess the best for kids. And when I say that, I'm saying like, my parents were doing everything. It could have just been a lot better, but they didn't know how. So trying to show Darius that we're trying to provide him things that he just didn't know. Well, nobody in his house. His mother didn't know. Like, I didn't know. My wife had to teach me a lot of the things that I didn't know that were necessary. I'll give you an example. Doctor's appointments, just like going to the doctor when you're sick. Like, we were told not to go to doctors. Like, if you had to be on your deathbed to go to a doctor. Now you got insurance to go to the doctor, and we find ways to not go to the doctor. And well, that was me. Like, I didn't go to the doctor unless I really had to. And I used to talk about people who went to the doctor because they were sick.
Like, look at you using your insurance, dumb. Like, paying a premium every month and you use those services.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you just don't know until you be like, oh. So because in my head, I'm like, I'm tough. Like, what you going to the doctor for? We just gonna suck it up. And it's like, you don't have to suck up everything. And what you don't understand is when you suck it up, you tend to suck up other things when it hurts, and you get tougher in areas, and you expect other people to be tough in those areas. So when you see them, you like, they soft. Like, just because you went through it don't mean that anybody has to go through
just
it.
because you want to have this unrelenting headache.
I know.
Like, I don't want that, so I'm going to go do this. I'll be soft.
And but that's what I'm saying. Like, you couldn't be soft growing up the way that we grew up because people take advantage of soft people. At least that's what I thought. And I see that now. But looking at Darius is trying to be tougher than he is when he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
This is what, look, I've worked with kids my whole life as an adult, and I see kids that act like they tough, and I see kids that are really tough. And looking at my nephew, I mean, I know that he's not tough. I know that he's not a punk, but he don't want none of those problems. But he acts like he's the one that can cause all of the problems. And all he need is one person to just say, bow, sit down and be quiet. Like a kid his age. You know what I'm saying? But until that happens, I think he's just dancing like nobody's watching. That's what he's doing. He's walking through life like nobody's
He's just doing him.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The consequences have not made him realize that maybe he shouldn't be acting like this.
Let me just pause and ask, how did this tie into covet and envy?
You brought Darius in.
But where did covet and envy come from?
I was telling you covet and envy because I was thinking about the way kids interpret things. And I was like, the way that I grew up on it, what are they seeing now? So I was just talking about racism on the self-hate. That's what I was talking about, how kids look at the words. Like if we're talking about racism, how do they look at it? Because Darius doesn't know self-hate. You know what I'm saying? So
he doesn't know he's
a part of that population of people.
Right.
So when I was talking about covet and envy, I was just showing the comparison of what the kids are learning in school versus how I learned it.
Oh, okay. So I was looking this up because I was like, I want to be able to make the distinction, and I couldn't get the word out of my mouth. But covet doesn't mean you're going to take it. Covet just means that you wish or you long or you crave for something someone has. Well, envy is the resentment you have towards someone because of what they have.
I'm only going by what day. Okay. I can tell you. They was right there, and she started talking about her school assignment. So I didn't look anything up. I was just like, oh, I didn't know that. The messaging you were talking about, if we don't talk to the kids about vocabulary words, we don't know what they mean because, like I said, if Day is going under the impression of covet and envy is this way and you just looked up something like that, it don't matter what you think because I'm only caring about what she thought it meant and how she's going to approach it. You know what I'm saying? I know, like me, I guess the whole point of me talking about that is like we need to be more in tune with how they interpret words versus what we think the words mean. Because you and I can have a good sense of what words mean, but if we think that they know what it means, it don't mean anything if they do something different. Like, what are you talking about? Just like the word covet and envy. That's what I'm saying. So even with self-hate, I was trying to say with Darius, how do you stop that? And what does he know? What does he think of when he hears that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think, like, I had self-hate too.
Yeah, I don't think that he's really processing what I'm saying when I say it's like when he does something, I say, you know, that's showing self-hate. Like
that's what I'm saying. So what do you think we should do to at least make them aware of?
Well, I'm definitely not an expert, but the only thing I can think of is just to dial it back and ask him, like, why does he feel that way? Like, okay, for example, y'all, so we're watching this show. It's a flipping show. And the people bought a house off auction. They get in the house. And whoever lived in there before destroyed the house. Cut all the blinds up. Hit the hardwood floors with hammers. Broke out all the windows, everything. So we're sitting here watching it, and he says to me, some Africans must have lived there. And I said, okay, why would it be that? And he said, well, they would do that. They would tear up their stuff. And I said, okay, so why couldn't it be anyone else? And he was like, because he said, what did he say? He said, because one time, I guess at some point in time before, someone had him help go clean out a house. Maybe they got a house off auction or something. And he said, and the people who lived in it before had messed up the house and they were Africans. And I said, okay, so what did it mean to mess up the house? He was like, well, you know, it's dirty and it was like broken furniture in there, like a dresser and whatever. And I said, were the windows broken out? And he said, no. I said, did they smear food across the walls or cut up the blinds? He said, no. I said, could it be that someone else could have like, could there be another group of people that aren't black? And he said, well, Africans aren't black. And I said, wait a minute. Now, so you're trying to tell me now that you're making it distinctly about this particular group of people of color. And he was like, well, I'm just saying that they're the ones. And so for him, he generalized from that experience that it's people of color who tear up stuff. And then he specified that it was African, because in the conversation I had already told him, I said, Darius, to me, to assume that only black people will go in and tear a house up and white people are not capable of doing that, that's crazy to me, that we're the only ones that are capable of doing something so destructive. And that's when he was like, oh no, I'm not saying black people, I'm saying Africans. And I was like, So we had to explore that. We had to explore why it had to be people of color. And then we had to explore, is it possible that a white person could be angry and break something? Yes. Is it possible that a number of white people could be upset? They are losing their house. Someone took it away and they be angry. Whoever's going to get this house next, they're going to have to do work for it then. And then he's like, yeah. I said, just because you cleaned up one house where somebody had a broken dresser, like what you saw, does it look like this? And he said, no. And it, to me, it is like taking him back to the bare points of saying, okay, let's think through all of this, because the messaging is always going to be like, at this point, people don't have to overtly be racist towards us, a lot of us as adults or children, because the machine works so well. We help to perpetuate those things on our own. And we're not questioning when we think things. We're not questioning our kids when they think things. And with him, one of the things is very helpful. And he and Day are the same in the sense that sometimes I'll be like, okay, well, what about this? What about that? Like, let's not generalize everything based off of what you've seen. Is it possible that this could happen too with a different group or in this situation, so that they can see that their perspective or their experience isn't the only possibility? Because I feel like we're being fed that message and we're generalizing it to all of us. All black people have to be like this. All people of color have to be like this. But they don't do any generalizations other than expecting better from white people. They don't do other generalizations in according to them. And it's hard for me. The only thing I could see to do was to ask the most basic of basic questions of each piece and then ask him to put the whole puzzle together. So if we're saying all of these things, is it possible that it wasn't an African family? It's like, yeah. Is it possible it wasn't a black family? Yeah. Is it possible it was a white family? Yeah. And it's not to say I need him to sit there and look at all white people as destructive, but you can't go into a situation and be like, stuff looks messed up.
You can't assume,
must be us.
Yeah, you can't assume that.
Yeah. It's hard.
It is. And I was just listening, like reliving it all over again, like to try to convince somebody you love so much that it has nothing to do with the skin color why this house looks like this.
Yeah.
And for you to automatically assume that it would be people that look like us that's only capable of doing something like this. And it's disheartening.
It makes me feel like I not only want to reprogram those thoughts for how he and the kids see the world, but I also want to reprogram it for his own perception of who he is.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do you think that him being black is going to play a role when he becomes older, as far as, like you remember I told you that, I was embarrassed to be Korean until I graduated. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's going to play a role, like a discreetly play a, well, you know what? I can already see it playing a role now.
How does it work for you?
It was insecure. I was just insecure. His insecurity is totally different from mine, though. He has to know that the parts that he hates, it was something that it was out of his control.
And I don't even think that he has the capability of hating.
Now, when I say hating, I'm talking about the parts
negative.
Yes.
Yeah.
The parts that makes him unhappy. The parts that,
when I think about that, it makes me think about my own, when I walk around, what kind of self-hate talk slips by that I'm not paying attention to.
Well, I listen to everything now. And how it was always on the radar, but it was ready to fight. And now it's like just knowing that when he talks, it's got to be important because he could be saying something that if we don't say anything, he's going to believe in because he knows that we're going to correct him.
Yeah, but I'm just saying me, Kanika, walking through the world.
Oh, I thought you were talking about.
No, with him, yeah, definitely. But for me, I'm just saying.
So
what kind of stuff do I just let fly?
Oh, like
most of the time.
I let a lot of stuff. I don't even care about majority of these things. The only reason why I care about him because I'm worried about self-esteem.
Yeah. But you know what? I love so much of my people as a culture. Like there are certain things that I'd be like, Black people just be making me like, of course it was us. Or I'll say something like that sometimes. But for the most part, like I love like now there's this new thing online where people will post the African American urge to. And so they'll be like the African American urge to turn off people's lights in their house running up electricity. The African American urge to what was the one thing they said that had me cracking up? Oh, so it was a guy, he was riding up there in the street and he's riding up and this little kid is hanging out the side of the window of his car. And it said the African-American urge of Black people to talk through their teeth and tell people's kids what to do. And when he walked up, he was like, sit your ass back. And the kid sat back and rolled up the window. And I just cracked up. And I'm like, I love us so much. Everything, even when we're hurting, even when things are bad, we will make things into a game, a joke, or something so that we don't have to feel bad. But in my head, I'm like, okay, I always tell people the things I love about us all the time. But are there messages that I'm letting fly by that I'm like, yeah, that's that self-hate though. Yeah. That's a little bit of that stuff that I left in the corner. I didn't know I didn't clean that part out.
I think a lot of the things that we let go is because we were able to overcome it. And we kind of just, I don't know how to explain it, but it's one of those things where we know that it doesn't affect us. So it's easier to let go. The stuff that
we've been resilient and it's above us now. Well, we're above that now.
You're correct.
So we can giggle, we can laugh about it.
Unfortunately. But I mean, it's still bad because there's people that get caught up in it and they're not as resilient.
I was talking to my friends last night and we were talking about therapy and instances where people we've known have said, I thought about suicide or whatever. And so we're talking about this and I said, do y'all realize how many crazy things we went through growing up and we just laughed it off? Like I remember, and there may be people who remember this moment. So picture this, 1997. It might have been 98. And so I'm in class, the second period, and somebody pulls me out of class and they're like, Kanika, there's a rumor that your boyfriend slept with X, Y, and Z, this girl. And so I'm mad because y'all know I'm always ready to fight. So I'm mad. She takes me. We all thought we were grown for some reason. So she takes me and we leave the school. We get in her car. We leave the school. I couldn't find my best friend at the time. So we come back. When we came back, the boyfriend had found my best friend in class and pulled her out and was crying, telling her what went on. And she's looking like, what the hell? So when I see her with him, I'm like, get away from him. And I'm telling her what's going on. And I am so hurt and distraught because, we think we in love. So I'm all hurt and distraught. And it's this big old to-do. And my mom talks to my friend because it was a big old to-do. And the vice principal called my mom. And so my best friend's talking to my mom. And she was like, well, why don't y'all just get out of there? So we all leave. Now, what do y'all know about a parent telling the vice principal, I just told the kids to leave. So it was 6 of us who left. So we all leave. We go to my best friend's house and I'm like bawling my eyes out. I'm so sad. I'm so hurt because, in love. And what do my friends do? We start singing a song. Do you remember that song? I'm looking for Nikki and all her freaky friends, right? So we start singing this song, and while we're singing the song, we sitting there punching in the air, but we're changing the lyrics because we fighting Nikki now, but we ain't fighting Nikki. We put the girl's name in there. So that's how I worked out my pain. Fast forward 2 years later, we're at my friend's apartment, and this same crazy boyfriend I had, he is like, we're playing around, and he ends up like, my friend is playing around, opening and closing the door. Like, if he was out here, I would be like, boom. Like, if she's opening the door, acting up. Well, she opened the door like the third or fourth time, and he was standing there. It was like Jason standing, like, coming to kill you, right? He's just standing there all of a sudden. So he comes in the house, and he's much bigger than me. And so, and this is someone who, he used to hit me in our relationship and whatever. And so, but he would never do it around my friends. But he wanted to. Like, I could tell if he could just get his hands on me. So I'm on the other side of the coffee table. And we are for real circling the coffee table. And I would just keep moving when he moving, to not let him get near me. And so then he says something about that bitch. And my best friend said, who you calling a bitch? That wasn't clear.
He's so stupid.
But she didn't say that. We didn't say UNITY. So she said, who you calling a bitch? So then he looks at me and points at me. He said, that bitch right there, right? So they call my mom. He leaves before my mom gets there. So my mom is like, y'all all right? We're like, yeah. So she leaves. And she was like, you make sure you get home, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So she leaves. So we're all sitting in there. And we were like, that shit was crazy, dude. Like, I was really scared. And it was like, yeah, it was some scary shit. So then my friend Shannon was like, that bitch right there.
Yeah, and turned a bad situation into a funny situation already.
That bitch right there. Because he was so mad at me, he told me to give him everything. So he was like, give me all your shit. All my shit. And so we laughed uncontrollably, making up songs about this situation. And so when we were talking, I'm saying all this to say, when we were talking, we were just talking about how it was scary situations, and there were bad situations, they were hurtful situations, and we found a way to make it into a joke. To this day, if I said that bitch right there to any of my friends without even singing it, they might just bust it to give me all my shit. Like, because that's how dumb, it's how dumb we were, but it's definitely how we, found a way to cope with all of these crazy things that were going on with us. Mm-hmm. And when my mom learned the extent of the craziness, like, she was like, what in the world was going on with you? Like, she knew that the guy, was really, really caught up in being around me. And so, but she didn't know that he was hitting me. She didn't know that we were scared. She just knew that he was in the house and he was yelling. And if she came, he would leave if he saw her. And so, but my mom never really knew the extent, even when, the thing in high school, Lynn was just, my best friend was just explaining to my mom, like, Kanika is mad because such and such, there's a rumor going around and she's really upset. I think that we should just get her out of the school for a little while. And my mom was like, yeah, go ahead and leave. So my mom didn't really know, like we were doing entirely too much before I even met you, Mr. Too Much. But even then, as young teenage girls, we were doing just that. We were definitely using joy to get past pain.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys were in situations you guys should not have ever been, especially with guys that are physically aggressive like that at such a young age.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are other things that I definitely want to make sure that, I feel like the adversity I faced growing up, I'm glad that whatever protective factors were keeping me out of truly, being hurt or dead or, whatever the case may be, I'm going to use those lessons as protective factors for my kids. Like, okay, so y'all, let's talk about what it could look like.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it could look like now because I think that I don't think they would tolerate any of that mess. And
me tolerating it said a lot more about what I thought of myself. And I think we talked before about, feeling like you can love somebody out of, when you love someone, you want them to stop hurting. You feel like you can sacrifice yourself a little bit longer to heal this person. And those were all too many grown up things going on.
How did you come about that idea at such a young age?
Like I said, I think it was my mother. My dad was sick, and my mom. What I felt, I guess I should ask her. I think that it was more so making sure, because he was our father, making sure he was okay. So my mom was trying to navigate things in order to make sure he's stable, and she was really sacrificing her time and her happiness in order to try to do that. But to me, the basic model I saw was, if someone is sick or someone has a bad behavior or it's not healthy, try to tough it out in order to bring them around to being that healthy person. And I'm sure that's not the message my mom wanted me to get. And later on, the message she gave me in how she approached Mary and my stepfather, it definitely gave me some great lessons in understanding, some of those things that I thought I understood watching her and what it actually was in the end. Like, it helped me see how my interpretation was wrong. But I definitely thought, like, I knew my dad was a struggle. And the fact that my mom stayed and she didn't have to, trying to help, I guess I thought that was something that a good woman would do because my mother is a good woman. So I did 1 + 1 = 2. And it's not that simple. But when you're a teenager and you're watching, you think. Because all the things you're doing is modeling these adult relationships you're seeing. When you're in high school, you're thinking you're doing the same thing. But you're not. You're not, because you got a kid brain. And the more I think about the situations I put myself into and how I made sure my mom didn't know some of these things until much later, I knew that those situations were too much for me too. Yeah. I had to, if I wasn't letting her know anything about it, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I know, like so I guess your bad was actually worse than a lot of kids' bads at that age, because your bad could have changed so many different paths for you. Like there are women that had experiences like yours and didn't have pleasant outcomes, or didn't get valuable learning lessons, but it was too late.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've seen some that, they came out later on definitely like thriving.
No, I'm talking about somebody.
But it could have been. It could have been bad. It could have been.
I mean, like, and nobody deserves any of those situations. And I was thinking, like, I know you're my wife and all, and I'm thinking, like, I know the stories, but just thinking about how that young man maneuvered through life to get to that point, and comparing it to me. And then I started thinking about my father, because I didn't know my father was physical with my mother until the last few years. My sister told me, she said she saw him hit my mother, but I've never saw that. I saw my father push my mother, but that was after my mother, like, bing, got him real good. And I was like, whoa. And and in my head, I'm not gonna lie, as a kid, I was like, oh, I would have knocked her out for that one. And I remember feeling that way. I was in the hallway looking up, and I was like, oh, that hurt. And you just getting to this point. Like, I the last time I hit a woman physically, or she wasn't a woman, it was a girl, 7th grade. But I'm saying, like, I just didn't have that. So now I'm thinking, like, what if I did see my father hit my mother? What kind of programming would I have had? Would I have thought that even though people say you don't do this, but in your household, it's okay. Right. So the blessing of not being able to see that, to say that I would have been able to rise above my anger and not hit somebody, because I've been very angry at times, and a lot of times when it's dealing with other guys, it's been a fight. But with women, it was always a kill switch. You know what I'm saying? So just to not see it, I mean, it could have been different for me also. So I'd just be like, and I know, like I said, you're my wife, and I'm supposed to be thinking in your best interest, but I'm thinking about this young man too, because that could have been me, at a young age, if I had any type of influence, if we believe that the programming that we see can dictate behaviors later in life. So that I appreciate you sharing that, because we can make bad days look good. But the thing is, we need to still get some therapy, just to get those things out, to know, like, look, you should have not been in those situations. Yeah. And you've what you don't know is, well, I'm sure you do, but a lot of those decisions when you were younger affected the way that you approach things as an adult. And, sometimes you don't even know that you're burying yourself into a further hole. But I am glad that you and I are here, where we can, unlayer that onion together, and when it gets tough, that we can help each other through it.
No, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I appreciate it again, you sharing that. Is anybody you want to give a shout out to before we get out of here?
I want to give a shout out to FAY.
What is FAY?
FAY is my crew in high school.
Oh, for real? That's crazy. And mine is FAB.
FAY stood for F all y'all, because
oh no, mine wasn't like that.
because that's who we were. But I want to give a shout out to FAY. I love y'all, and to this day I would laugh about pretty much everything we've ever done. Yeah.
Shout out to Fab. I remember it being, well, it started out as Fab 5, because, we all played basketball, and then as we matriculated through high school, it got larger. Some people didn't play basketball, and we dropped a number and just was Fab. And I said it was Funky Ass Brothers. Some other people said it was Fine Ass Brothers. Oh. But that was a real group. I mean, still to this day, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to those brothers, because they were there at the beginning of me trying to become a better person. And a lot of those brothers, they helped me in so many different ways. Even to this day, some of the things they did during my childhood has helped me today, and I'm in deep appreciation for all of them. Shout out for me. I want to give a shout out to anybody who's just trying to get better, whether it's through communication, health, food, being active, being a better parent, a better friend, colleague, anything. Just get better, because when people get better, people see that, and it just rubs off. So shout out to all of y'all who is making a conscious effort
to get better. And I'm gonna say, make today better than yesterday. Don't worry about anything you can't control. GATA. Get after that action, or that action will get after you.
We're looking for Nikki and all her freaky friends.
Boom.